Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Jennifer Surtees, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Bart Glenn. We warmly welcome the family of Flight Sergeant Ronald Leslie Horstmann, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Mr. Peter Chesnik, Minister of the Republic of Slovenia for Slovenians abroad, and His Excellency Mr. Yuri Rafelier, Ambassador of Slovenia to Australia. We are also honoured to acknowledge Mr. Michael Ward, who has just finished walking from Melbourne to Canberra to raise awareness of suicide in the military. Mr. Ward is accompanied by Mr. Shane Rattenbury, ACT Minister for Mental Health, Mr. Ivan Slavic, CEO of Soldier On, and Ms. Ali Kelly, CEO of Mindblank. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the Australian National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Ronald Leslie Horstmann. Ronald Horstmann was born on the 28th of April 1922 in the small settlement of Netherlee near Swan Reach in South Australia. The son of Johan and Blondine Horstmann, the young Ronald attended Menham High Primary School, then Adelaide High School, and grew up alongside his brothers and sisters. A keen sportsman, he played tennis, cricket, football and golf. Following his schooling, Horstmann was employed as a bank clerk for the Bank of Adelaide, working at the Curramulka and Lameroo branches. On the 10th of October 1942, Horstmann enlisted into the Royal Australian Air Force. Horstmann had two brothers who also served in the Second World War. His older brother, Private Leo Horstmann, had been killed in May 1941 in the fighting during the siege of the Tobruk while serving with the 2nd 10th Battalion. Another brother joined the RAF and survived the war. Horstmann began his training as a navigator. Whilst he was training, he married Olva on the 23rd of January 1943. Together they had a daughter, Patricia Jeanette Horstmann, born on the 18th of April 1943. A few months later, having finished his initial training in Australia, Horstmann embarked for his overseas service. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who throughout the course of the war joined Royal Air Force squadrons or Australian squadrons based in Britain. His journey to Britain took him via Canada, where he arrived in July 1943. After several months of training in Canada, he embarked for Britain in late April 1944. Arriving in Britain, Horstmann undertook further specialist training before he was posted to No. 12 Squadron, Royal Air Force in late February. As part of the Royal Air Force Bomber Command, No. 12 Squadron was equipped with 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bombers. On the night of the 3rd to the 4th of March 1945, the Lancaster, in which Horstmann was the navigator, was undertaking a training flight when it was shot down by an enemy intruder near Stockwith, Lincolnshire. Horstmann and all 6 of his fellow crewmates were killed. They were fellow Australians, Flight Sergeant Walter Pridmore, Flight Sergeant George Davis, Flight Sergeant Alan Cryer, Flight Sergeant Alexander Weston, and British crewmates, Pilot Officer Arthur Thomas and Flight Sergeant Thomas McCaffrey. Horstmann was 22 years old. He had been with his squadron for less than a week when he was killed. The bodies of the crew were recovered from the crash, and Horstmann and his Australian crewmates are buried side by side in the RAF plot at Cambridge City Cemetery. Horstmann's name is listed here on the roll of honour to my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Ronald Leslie Horstmann, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.